Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
And we are
No,
FAIRtax Guys. You still have your scrolling banner, and I've still got Fat Albert here representing the complexity and the instability of the tax code. How cool is that?
great. Something's going to have to replace the folks that dress up like Lady Liberty during tax season. When the income tax is eliminated and the IRS goes away, those folks that have, they stand on the street corner and they have their, tax preparation signage, and they're kind of a green, like a copper, a dull copper dress on, or whatever it is. And so I guess what we'll end up doing is have a scrolling banner to replace that for at least a first.
Well, actually, with a fair tax, there will be no tax season. You don't have to worry about nothing. You don't even think about paying your taxes. You pay them when you buy stuff at the cash register. Of course, the tax is included in the price, but you don't think about it. You just do it, and that's it.
You just have a big sign up there that says "Thank you," or you can say "You're welcome" from the fair tax.
Okay, that'll work. All right, well, let's get going. How do you like my background this week?
I love that. I've seen it before, and you need to tell the story about Conductor Bob.
Well, actually, no, not conductor, engineer. I have sat in the engineer's seat and have actually worked the throttle of that steam locomotive down in Spencer, North Carolina, when it was there, and I drove up there to just to drive that. That's the for those again who are listening on the radio or listening to an audio podcast, this is the Norfolk and Western steam locomotive, the retired passenger locomotive 611, and it's quite a beast. But that was fun. But let's get talking about a beast. The income tax code, a beast that we need to slay and get rid of. And the Congress critters, I say, they're still not got back into full swing of proposing changes to the tax code. We got a few of them that we're going to deal with this week in our Congress.gov segment, and we will start off with comes from the Senate. This is S 2723, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to modify certain rules applicable to qualified small issue manufacturing bonds to expand certain exceptions to the private activity bond rules for first-time farmers and for other purposes. You understand that one, sure?
Have you noticed? Yeah, sure. I understand all of that. Do you think that the "and for other purposes" is showing up a lot more lately? Do you think they've sort of caught on that they need to add this into everything? Sort of like interstate commerce clause has to be at the front of every bill to make it pass, so they can do stuff outside of the lines of the states.
Oh, I don't know, but that's there's just more complexity to the tax code to amend the rules applicable to qualified small issue manufacturing bonds to expand certain exceptions to the private activity bond rules for first-time farmers. Now, how do you define a first-time farmer? Is that some is that somebody who just goes out of the field for the first time and he's no longer a first-time farmer, or is that somebody who is the first in his family to pursue that occupation? Who knows? Who cares? Let's keep going now. HR 5317 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow distributions from a flexible spending arrangement or health reimbursement arrangement directly to a health savings account in connection with establishing coverage under a high deductible health plan. Boy, you got to have that in the tax code, don't you?
Yeah, I can't imagine one without it.
All right, one more here. This is HR 5275 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to restore the taxable REIT subsidiary asset test, REIT again referring to Real Estate Investment Trust. So they're going to restore the taxable REIT subsidiary asset test. Asset, A-S-S-E-T, not acid, but all that's in the tax code. How many other developed countries in the world have that kind of stuff in their tax code? Who knows?
You have to be able to kind of keep people on their toes. Now, the rights as they are created are pretty efficient in terms of passing real estate on through without having to pay have your offspring buy the property after a certain number of years. But for some reason, I think the government tries to get in at angles where maybe they think they gave too much in a benefit somewhere, and now they've got to reel some of that back in. The whole operation of the federal government it's got so many moving parts. I don't even think the people that are specialists in a particular department or a particular way of thinking, I don't even think they know everything about.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who fully understands every line of the Internal Revenue Code.
I know that to be the case, and like for our business here, we get into this. We've got it pretty much figured out. We're in this particular lane, and these are the things that we have to do during the course of the 12 months in order to turn over and report the activities of the business for the year, and then send them off, and we get a bill. And I'm sitting there thinking, I could have used that money or the time that I spent somewhere else in creating, being innovative, a little less gray hair, maybe, from having to be concerned about all of the things that business owners get concerned about. I think that, and again, I said last week, when we were talking about the testimony from Master Marco, he was right on in a couple of things that he said. We haven't experienced a time where there wasn't an income tax. This is something that we just assume this is the way it's supposed to be, and that's not it.
He said people think that's mankind's highest achievement or something along those lines, and that's absolutely nuts. But all right, that's going to wrap up our Congress.gov segment. I think next week, hopefully the Congress critters will be back to their usuals. But next week, we probably won't even have a Congress.gov segment because we're going to have our AFFT president, Steve Hayes, will be back with us next week on FAIRtax Power Radio. Now, I get an advance copy, if you will, of the chairman's report that he writes every Friday. In fact, I try to edit it and, improve it a bit as far as readability and clarity and stuff like that go. So I get these things a little bit ahead of time. And the one that is that he's going to talk about is one of the scariest chairman's reports I have ever seen. And I've been doing this for years. So let's just leave it at that and invite people to be sure that they catch FAIRtax Power Radio next week and see what Steve Hayes has up his sleeve for. I mean, this is a scary, scary prospect, and that's all we're going to do for right now. Okay, let's move on. You found something the other day. Our friend, attorney John Richardson, who lives in Canada and specializes in assisting American citizens who are living outside the country with the unique tax problems and issues that our Internal Revenue Code imposes on that group of folks. And you found a pretty interesting article. Go.
Yeah. It's from taxconnections.com. It's a tax blog segment of that website. And thanks to John for bringing this through to everyone's attention that he reaches out to. And we saw this and thought, well, we need to talk about this particular situation. This was written on August 29th of this year. IRS interest rates increased to 8% per year, compounded daily.
Compounded daily. Okay. Wow. That means every single day they're going to add more interest to if you're short on your taxes or something like that. Yeah.
Today they'll add more today, and then today's number will be added tomorrow. Well, the article starts out like this. The Internal Revenue Service announced that interest rates will increase for the calendar quarter beginning October 1st, 2023. That's right on top of us. For individuals, the rate for overpayments and underpayments will be 8% per year, compounded daily. And then they give a list of the new rates. 8% for overpayments, payments made in excess of the amount owed. That's individual. 7% for corporations. 5.5% for the portion of a corporate overpayment exceeding $10,000. 8% for underpayments, taxes owed but not fully paid. 10% for large corporate underpayments.
Yeah, that's when you hear about interest and penalties. This is it.
You get the letter. Under the Internal Revenue Code, the rate of interest is determined on a quarterly basis. For taxpayers other than corporations, the overpayment, that's sole proprietors and individuals. The overpayment and underpayment rate is the federal short-term rate plus 3 percentage points. Somebody's sitting there down with the magnifying glass going, let's look at this angle of this quartz crystal. Generally, in the case of a corporation, the underpayment rate is the federal short-term rate plus 3 percentage points, and the overpayment rate is a federal short-term rate plus 2 percentage points. The rate for large corporate underpayments is the federal short-term rate plus 5 percentage points. Rate on the, you know where I'm going to end up with this, right? The rate, yes, right. The rate on the, somewhere on the back of my toilet near publication 17 is a transcript of this. The rate on the portion of a corporate overpayment of tax exceeding $10,000 for a taxable period is the federal short-term rate plus 1/2 of a percentage point.
Why don't we just get rid of all this junk and replace it with a fair tax?
That's going to be my next comment. That was exactly what I was going to say. Well, Bob, we can't do that. How are we going to get our taxes to the Treasury? The fair tax.
Yes, we'll let the states collect it at the cash register, and then we don't have to worry about it.
Hey, speaking of conservation, how about all the trees that would be saved without having to print all that paper? They do have the Paperwork Reduction Act, which is probably something that is still going to be needed in the operation of the federal government, but certainly not to do with the income tax because it won't be around. Yeah. So anyway, the interest rates announced today are computed from the federal short-term rate determined during July 2023. Somebody was working this summer. See the revenue ruling for details. So this is at taxconnections.com, and you'll have to search for the article, or overall, formerly known as Twitter. John Richardson is out there. And
if you back up and look at John Richardson's original post on this, he's directing this to Americans abroad with PFICs. Okay, PFIC, that's a passive foreign investment company. And apparently, if you invest in a foreign company, you should know that the interest charge on totally fake income, those are John's words, the interest charge on totally fake income that you never receive is now 8% compounded daily. And his, I guess this is legal advice, renouncing is the best investment you can make. So we have a tax code that encourages people to renounce their American citizenship. Now, just how stupid is that?
Yeah, it's insane. It's just, and this whole thing, and again, it comes down to what I just read is a perfect example of how convoluted the tax code is when you get into that much detail related to interest rates. And penalties weren't necessarily mentioned in that, but you can bet they're back there too.
But John has noted on several occasions that the United States is one of 2 countries on earth. The other one, I think, is Eritrea, a very small one. There is one of the, in fact, far and away the only major country on the face of the earth that taxes its citizens on all of their income, regardless of whether they're living in the United States or not. So if you live in another country, you earn money in another country, there is a certain amount that you can, that's not subject to taxation. But money that you earn in a country outside the United States, the IRS wants a piece of it. And the United States is for all practical purposes, the only country in the world that does that to its citizens. And that's why John's saying, hey, just renounce. Don't let them mess with you.
Right. And just get rid of your citizenship in the U.S. Yeah.
That's sad. Of course, we had the fair tax that if you're living outside the country, then you're not buying anything at a U.S. cash register. You're not paying the fair tax because you're not consuming goods in the United States. So that solves all the. I'm not sure that it'll put John out of business, because I imagine he can figure out something else to work with if that particular problem is solved. But yeah, that's the fair tax would be an absolute boon for the expatriated Americans, citizens living outside the country. They would no longer have to worry about sending part of the money they earn in another country back to the IRS. That's morally wrong.
And again, we just sort of have been lulled into this as the way it is, over the years. I grew up watching my dad, right before April 15th. Back then, it didn't take near as long as it does today. He did it sitting at his desk in the den at the house. And that's all we knew. And I'm sure his daddy saw it, was probably, he was born back in the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a possibility that he knew that there was no income tax until World War I, because he fought in World War I. So
yeah,
he probably
1913 is when the income tax was implemented. So if you're born in the late 1800s, you've experienced some time without an income tax. Of course, at that time, you're probably too young to be working, and you're not dealing with the tax system anyway.
You were working on the farm. You were working on the family farm if you lived in the country and that kind of thing. So we don't know. I guess we just have to pay our taxes through the income tax, and I'll have to get the IRS publication 17 and so on and so forth. And this is so much. I mean, I always like to stop and talk about the psychological part of it, because there is so much pressure, especially on a one-man band or, a small business owner that has several employees and that's it. He's got to spend a good bit of time on it if you get to a point where you can visualize a tax on consumption, specifically the fair tax, and that process is going to eliminate all of the tax compliance, all of the worry, all of the check writing, the fact that you might have to have advice from an expert. You don't have to write a check to them anymore. God bless those folks, because they do work hard from the beginning of tax season right around the end of every year, all the way through and past April 15th. And all of that productivity that is lost in just the tax compliance is enough.
Oh yeah, we talked about that last week.
As much as we talk about it on this program, the business owner comes out ahead because he might be able to hire somebody else, or he might be able to sleep an extra couple of hours a night. Or he might be able to think about something and come up with an innovative product or a service that helps humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You just miss it. You miss that opportunity because, where's that paper that I had over here to, that I've got to get over to my tax guy.
Yes.
But the people that work, the working class, families, single mothers we've talked about, benefit greatly. Everybody does. Everybody.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get rid of the income tax to solve all these problems for a lot of people, not just folks that are living outside the country. replace it with a FAIRtax and make everybody happy. You never file a tax return again. You get a tax refund every month, guaranteed. The IRS goes away. Withholding disappears from your paycheck. You bring home your entire check. All the good stuff that comes with a FAIRtax. We gotta make it go. And I'll tell you what, speaking of good stuff, we mentioned this on the program a few weeks ago. This new technology that, well, I have a hard time calling it X. It used to be Twitter, but they now call it X. And they had this new technology called Spaces, which in effect is like an internet chat room. In the old internet chat rooms, though, you'd sit at your keyboard and type out whatever you wanted to say. These Spaces are similar to that in function, but instead of having to type what you're saying, you can actually, speak and listen. It's a spoken word rather than the typed word. And we are moving forward with bringing the FAIRtax message into these spaces. As a matter of fact, by the time this program streams, we will have had one already. So let me encourage everyone to, if you are not following the FAIRtax official account on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, if you follow the FAIRtax official account there, you will be notified. These spaces will be, scheduled several days in advance, and we're going to try to have them on different days of the week, different times of the day. So we'll be available to as many possible people as possible. And what's really, really cool, let me tell you this real quick, is Steve Hayes helped me out, and I was able to connect with John Linder. Now, John Linder was the original sponsor of the FAIRtax bill when it was first introduced in Congress in 1999. He also co-wrote the FAIRtax books with Neil Bortz. John Linder is out of the country at the moment, but when he gets back, he has agreed to participate in one of these spaces discussions. Hopefully we can get him for more than one. I don't know exactly when it'll be available, but it'll be announced well in advance, and you'll be able to physically talk and listen to John Linder talking about the FAIRtax. That is going to be really cool.
And go back to the gentleman that we had on last week that gave the testimony in front of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
He was working with John. They were working together, and Linder was the representative from Georgia who actually walked that whole program.
Actually, I think Rob Woodall was the sponsor at that point, because that was in 2011. But Linder was the original one, and he knows the FAIRtax frontwards and backwards, of course. And it's exciting to me to get in that space and be able to talk with him.
Yes.
Quick technical note: if I understand right, the technology for these spaces only works on the Twitter smartphone app at the moment. If you go to their website on a regular computer, I believe you can listen to a space, but you can't participate. So if you want to actually participate in the discussion, you'll have to use the smartphone app versus the website. But anyway, it's just exciting to be able to say the FAIRtax is going to have their message out there using this new technology. We've got hosts from all over the country, so we can have them in times that are convenient for people in different time zones. And we would urge you to get your friends and family to listen, and get your friends and family to spread the word that this is out there now.
Yes, absolutely. This is going to be it's going to be exciting. And you and I sit and talk, and there's this wall to the folks that are listening that they're not able to respond.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with pre-recording the show. We can interact, in real time with the people in the comments. But hopefully that's one of the things we'll be able to do, because we'll announce this as well, that we'll be making our annual visit up to WTOB and doing our FAIRtax Power Radio episode live on Sunday morning, October 22nd. So if you're listening to the radio station, either over the air or by one of their web streaming things, you'll be able to call and talk to us on that particular show. But other than that, most of the time we're pre-recorded and you can't talk to us directly. But we can on this Spaces. So again, this is just going to be really good technology, and hope we can make good use of it.
It really is. Looking forward to it. And we've had a few, been very successful. We'll have more. So make sure you go to X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you don't have an account there, get one. and search for FAIRtax Official. And that is
Yes.
on there, you'll find all of us and Bob and me and a bunch of other volunteers that are out there, Randy Fisher and the folks that are deep into advocacy for the FAIRtax are all there. We can begin this grassroots re-energizing of everybody's understanding of what the FAIRtax is at an important time, because we're hoping and praying that at some point here in the next little while, our House of Representatives will be bringing H.R. 25 out of committee and onto the floor for a debate and a vote. It was promised Kevin McCarthy as part of his package to become the Speaker of the House. So
so we can tell which of our members of Congress support the IRS and the income tax, and which ones support getting rid of the IRS and the income tax. And I would love to see some campaign ads in this next election cycle against people who vote for the income tax and says, this person wants to keep the income tax and keep the IRS a part of your life. I want to get rid of it. And I have no idea what the vote's going to go. As far as I know, there's still no bill in the Senate. So the chances of actually passing it into law this Congress is pretty well close to nothing. I don't think the current president we have would sign it if it came to him. But at least we're going to start putting some people on record as to whether they favor the income tax or whether they favor the FAIRtax.
Yes, and that's important to put it squarely on the question of would you rather have the Internal Revenue Service or not? You know, and by hitting them on that answer, how are they going to? There's no way to nuance that into a response other than yes or no. It's a yes or no.
Yeah. Well, as we mentioned last week, that the income tax, one of the partners in the unholy trinity of why we keep the income tax are members that are looking for campaign contributions, and they manipulate the tax code to get campaign contributions. So if you just threaten to raise taxes on a particular industry, they can count on contributions flooding in from that industry. No, don't do that to us. So that they use the tax code as an ATM machine. And Steve has begun asking in his chairman's reports, why would the Congress critters, willingly give up that power? And the answer is they won't. Not voluntarily. The only way they will is if we demand it.
Right. And once you understand it, you'll demand it, of course.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We are all out of time again. Hopefully to see a lot of you out on these Twitter or X, whatever you want to call them, spaces. Bring your questions, bring your comments at the FAIRtax. And again, we'll be advertising John Linder's appearance in at least one of these spaces as soon as we can nail all that down. But until we meet again, we'll catch you next week. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000, okay? Keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?